All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Peter Feliciano. Welcome to Conservatish episode 137. And you can find this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave a review and rate it. And also find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano. And you can support my music and my podcast at patreon.com/conservatish or just Venmo me. I don't give a fuck. And at Peter-Feliciano, Feliciano. Yeah, where can people find you? Do you want people to find you, or you?
Not important, man. I'm just another mouth with an opinion, man.
All right, you're on the right show. Okay, well, great. Our guest today for episode 137 is Scott Big Red. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me. Obviously, have you had a chance to listen to any of the shows?
Yeah, I listened to some of your stuff, man. I want to also just give a shout and say thanks, man. I have a very high level of respect for you. We know each other on a semi-personal level.
Yeah.
I knew you more as a performer prior to taking on the endeavor that you're taking on. But we kind of always were on the same wavelength on some things. And you've asked me before to do shows when you were just starting out here in San Francisco. I never seized the opportunity, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I felt like this was probably a time to get out and just start flapping my gums, I guess.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I think everyone deserves, and maybe this is, not deserves is the weird way to say it, but like I think platforms are a necessary thing. Just like we all deserve a vote, whether we are informed or not. Apparently, you're allowed to have a podcast even when you're uninformed. So, but I also think that most people. I mean, and I don't know if you've experienced this from the ones you've listened to, but I've had far right, I've had far left, I've had people in the middle, I've had drag queens like Pollo Del Mar, I've had former members of the Proud Boys on. I've had all kinds of different walks of life, and everybody's kind of okay. And everybody's a little dumb and a little smart, and a little all right and a little wrong and a little. We're all right. And when you get somebody alone, you can humanize them, and that's kind of been one of my big projects with this whole thing. So one of the main things, obviously, first things first, we met because you were Mr. SF Leather 2014. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Seems like a long time ago, but
I know I can't believe it's been 6 years. Actually, in fact, I think SF Leather would have probably been going on in was it April, or maybe it might have been more of a summer thing.
They did it March. I'm not sure. They might have changed. They were trying to coordinate with the Miz contest. Mm-hmm. So I haven't been to the actual contests here in San Francisco in a couple of years. I think Cody Bear Elkin was the last contest that I went to, and I'm not sure if you recall or if you're aware, he's now the American Leatherman. He won that title just this year, so he's a current title holder with that. But he was the last title that I went to here in San Francisco. So it's been a couple of years since I went. I'm not sure when they're doing it anymore, but it used to be March, and so there's that.
Now, for people who don't know, what is kind of there's a big culture in San Francisco that's very it's mostly, I guess, philanthropic in its nature. Besides just being a fun and sharing environment, whether it be the SF Leather events or contests, or the I guess it's not called Empress. Is it called Empress in San Francisco? I know Pollo Del Mar was last year.
Yeah, there's quite a big following for the Dutches, and that's a whole different culture in itself. Yes, I never got too heavily involved in it, although I did participate in some of their things that they had as Mr. San Francisco Leather. But it's a culture that I'm not part of, but they certainly have a lot of fun doing what they do. That's what it's kind of all about. So,
right, and I got connected to it, I think, actually through the Bare Chest calendar. I was performing with Kippy Marks, who's this great violinist from San Francisco. I had performed with her I performed with him a couple of times, and then he actually wrote an article about me in the SF Bay Times for 2013 as the rising up and coming artist, and then they needed a guitarist for Bare Chest Calendar Finals, so I performed there. And
That's
then they
probably
needed
where I first met you was, I think you did the guitar, you did the performance for that show, and I've seen
Right.
you probably a half dozen times since
Right.
then, performing within the various different leather, BDSM, kink, alternative type communities that we have here in San Francisco.
Right. And I always had a great time. The crowds were really supportive and really, connected. And, I wouldn't really, sing an original or whatever. So it wasn't like my artistic, expression got to whatever. But it also was a great place for me to connect and to network, and also to just have a fucking blast. I mean, I think it was SF Leather. Yeah, I think it was SF Leather one year. It might have been the one that you won. But I remember I played Hey Ya by Outkast. And at the very end, I was literally in the green room practicing and just all nervous. And I thought, what would be fun is at the very end to just drop my pants. And so, I like started playing, I like loosened my pants. I went out there to the stage and I played, and everyone's having fun and we're yelling back and forth to the whatever. And at the very end, I just fucking, stepped sideways and my pants fell and I just, belted the last note. I've had a lot of good times with the gay community, with the SF BDSM community up there. Amazing, amazing times. Poya Damar, Daddy Ray Tilton. Oh my God, like really good people. And I remember you won. What was the experience like? What was the experience like trying out for that? Was that your first year trying out for that?
Oh no, I'd competed twice for Mr. SF Leather. I competed in 2013. The first time that I competed, was pretty much an unknown nobody to the men's. Whenever I say men's or women's, I'd be referring to the gay or the lesbian community. So I was pretty much an unknown to that community, the men's community. All of the practices that I had done in San Francisco at that point was in the pansexual het scene. So I kind of came in.
Pansexual what?
Het, heterosexual pan het.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The other word for saying straight. So heterosexual. So the pan het scene is kind of a combined scene. They kind of play together frequently, share the same spaces often. So. But yeah, that first year I competed, was basically an unknown nobody. Only a handful of people knew me. Daddy Ray actually took me in under his wing pretty well, and Pops Arthur took me in under his wing. It just introduced me to that whole culture that I was somewhat familiar to from living in Rochester, upstate New York. That's where my first introduction to BDSM and its. I'm not sure what word I want to use. I'll say old guard leather. A lot of people go, "There's all that thing, old guard leather," But where I was introduced to it was from a subcult of the 15 Association.
What's that?
The 15 Association is probably the most renowned S&M club in the world for men's. It's a men's community. You have to be a man to be part of it. They don't have clubs in every single city, and I think in the city in Rochester, we didn't have the 15 Association, but we had the Rochester Rams, who followed the same structural guidelines. So when I came into the scene, it was through the men's gay scene in Rochester, and was taught the basic principles, and everything that I learned was through what was already embedded here in San Francisco.
Okay. And what were the basic tenets? What were the main principles that were kind of, I mean, it wasn't obviously, because there's two different things here that were obviously, there's a BDSM umbrella, and that often from my experience has been more on the side of play parties and debauchery and, Folsom and all kinds of different the sex angle, but there's also seems to be a celebratory, social, and philanthropic angle, and so that's what it sounds like. The 15 Association was more kind of not in charge of, but that was more their thing, right? Not so much the play parties, but the social end and the philanthropic end. Yes.
Well, the 15 Association here in San Francisco, I'm not a member. I know a few people who are members, but they, it's an all men's club, and they take their business rather serious. It's all for fun. Everything we all do is for fun, but they have history and heritage and customs that they kind of live by, So, like, here's an example that I'll share with you. As the Mr. San Francisco Leather title holder, I was invited to. They have an annual boot camp every year. So I believe it was their 25th annual boot camp the year that I was a title holder, and they were gracious enough to extend me an all-expenses paid trip to their camp. So I went, and again, I know a few members personally, and I'm very good friends with two of them, and got to enjoy that weekend. Well, while up there, I had met the acquaintance of another fellow, and just hanging out in the pool one day, and we got to talking about various different things that sounded like something fun to do, as a scene between me and him. And after discussing it with him, he said, "Well, that sounds great, Red, but I really got to talk to my daddy about it." And I know his daddy's passed away, so his daddy was Master Daddy Timothy, and I know him. I've known him personally for a little bit of time before he passed and before the time that I'm talking about. So I figured, okay, sure, go talk to Master Daddy, right? Go talk to Master Daddy Timothy, and figured we'd be able to do our scene. Well, I seen him, whatever, a couple hours later, and the next time I saw him, he says, "Well," he goes, "I'm sorry, Red, but Master Daddy Timothy won't allow me to do this scene with you." "Why?" He says, "Well, he knows you from afar, and he knows you personally, but he's never actually watched you in front of him practice anything. And there's no way he's going to let his boy play with someone, no matter what his reputation is, where he's come from, without having witnessed what you are actually capable of doing. If you'd like to play with me, he's invited you to come up tonight to do a scene with him at the clubhouse that they have. Like, they have a little clubhouse where you can do scenes and have parties and have fun." So they invited me up, and he gave me the opportunity to show, or Master Daddy Timothy gave me the opportunity to show him what my skill set was on another human being. So he had a person who was a submissive for him there that he worked on, and asked me if I wanted to, play as well. And more or less, it was an audition. Show me what you got, kid.
Right.
Can you? I'm not going to give you my submissive to just do with how you want because you're Big Red.
Right.
I don't give a fuck who you are until you can prove that you, have the skill set that it takes to properly, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually handle another human being who willingly gives themselves to you. Oh, in hell, I'm going to do that. Right. So that's the type of practices that I'm talking about. Comes from the old guard leather. People are not going to just let you show up and just do what you want without them knowing what you're really capable of. So that's where the training and stuff comes from. And you start from the bottom, you work your way up, and over a period of time, if you're lucky enough, a group of people say to you, "Hey, look, would you like to start practicing on this person? Would you like to start practicing, try your skills and see if you can learn how it is the top rather than be the bottom?" Because you gotta. My belief is in order to properly handle someone who freely, willingly gives themselves to you, you have to know what it's like to be that person. Now, from every perspective. So, from the physical standpoint, from taking the endurance of what. So I will never use a item of impact on another human being unless that item has been physically used on me prior. I don't care.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't care if it's a spatula. I mean, it sounds kind of ridiculous. Spatulas are spatulas or spatulas or spatulas, but
Right.
But, so, one thing comes to mind is I had purchased with another friend at a flea market here in San Francisco.
Let me just pause you. Do you have headphones that maybe you can just, or a microphone like on a headphones or whatever that you may be able to? Because I'm doing okay, but I can hear you all right, but it's not as clear. It kind of goes in and out.
I don't have a microphone. Let me see if I can turn that up for you. Is that better, or just turn it up?
Might be. Yeah, actually, it's not even a volume thing. It's just a clarity thing. But that's all right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, what I usually use is this little thing that has the ding. Whatever.
I honestly don't.
It's no big.
Super duper check, but I'm pretty certain that I don't have those.
Oh, look at that dog.
That's Baxter.
Hey, Baxter.
I don't.
Okay.
Have one. I am so sorry.
No. It's honestly, it's clear. It's clear enough.
Okay.
I just wanted to see. That's all.
That's my little buddy.
Yeah, Baxter's a good kid. You could tell. Now, continue your story. I'm sorry. You were so.
Well, I had purchased a particular item, and I can't remember what the heck it's called now. It's a specific type of whip that's pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I hardly ever use it. It's an impact. Well, the point I'm trying to make is before I would even, I had to endure it. What's it like? I need to know what it feels like before I can use that item on somebody else. That's some of the training that I'm talking about that you get, that I got, and that others around me got and were willing to give to others. And we called it Old Guard leather because it came from leather heritage that was from old school, and it seemed like it was a little guarded. It wasn't for everybody to have, and I don't know. I'm not sure if that's where the name came from, but that's what I knew it as. And a lot of old timers, I don't know such thing as there wasn't no such thing as Old Guard leather. No. Maybe there wasn't, but in the era that I came in, the type of training that I received and the type of exposure I had to it, we called it Old Guard leather. So.
Okay. Now there does seem to be it's very, very interesting to me. I'm a dominant. I think probably as deep as I've gone into it is maybe using like a devil stick like on my own arm, but I've never been as deep into you know what, I'm gonna have this chick beat the shit out of me, so I know how it feels. It seems like on that angle that there would be a benefit, not just safety wise, but also intimacy wise, where you have a knowledge about this person that you are letting, say I'm a daddy and I'm letting my submissive play with somebody else. There seems to be probably more trust in that person, but also possibly more intimacy, if that might be, because I've had a time where I had an ex-girlfriend who was going to be playing with somebody else, and I was going to be playing with somebody else. She wanted to talk to this girl that I was going to go have sex with, just to confirm, hey, about me, number one, and also number two, just for her own spiritual kind of knowledge, and also for that. And then I talked to the guy that she was going to go play with, and there was something in her mind when she was having sex with that guy. There was something helpful, just her knowing that I knew, and almost she's told me later on that she just imagined me in the room with the two of them, and it helped her orgasm. It helped her feel more safe. It helped her feel more intimate with me. Even though she's literally having another guy's dick inside of her, she felt more connected and more intimate with me. It's an interesting thing that we don't talk about, certainly out in normal, everyday life, and so do you feel like there's a connection there? There's an intimacy level, both maybe not with the person you're playing with, but with the person who, with the sub and the daddy that allows them or is making sure they're safe, even though they're going off campus, if you will.
I'm not sure. I'm kind of trying to understand what you're talking about. So I think they're trying to relate it a little bit to how Master Daddy Timothy allowed this other fellow to play with me. Well,
Right.
he actually never played. He had me come up, and
Okay.
I showed him what I was capable of doing.
Right.
And he was, and my skill set in his mind was satisfactory. He was okay, and I really can't remember why, but me and that other fella never actually did our scene, and it had
Right.
nothing to do with what my skill set was. It was just
Mhm.
we just never it never evolved in there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was like a buzzkill to be. But I shouldn't say that. It was fun to do and show my
Right.
skill set and have approval, but
Right.
we just never played. So I can't
But I'm
speak
wondering
for
what I
how
mean is what I mean
Daddy
is
felt.
do you think that having that system helped that sub feel more connected to Daddy Timothy?
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
Okay.
hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Because it's that. I mean, oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I'm sure this fella felt an extreme amount of love and care for him that normally isn't displayed in a typical type relationship, right?
Right.
So, yeah, for someone to, because I don't want to like toot my horn on, but I'm pretty good at what I do. I've been doing what I've been doing for a long time, and I've earned the privilege to be allowed to play with people on the top side of things, right? So
Mhm.
it's a little bit of a shocker to have somebody question my abilities. So I imagine if I was the person in question, his name was Mike. We'll just go with his name was Michael. So I'm sure if I was in Michael's shoes and I was being asked or hit it off with me or someone like me and was looking exciting to getting to play, and I went back to my daddy and my daddy told me that I'm sorry, son, baby, however he addressed him, but I need to see his skills. I can't even imagine the amount of love that poured from his heart, feeling like his best interests were being taken care of. And
Right.
that's one of the basic precepts that a dominant absolutely has to have. And if he's received his training properly, this is my belief. And again, this belief came to me through the training that I received was, my role as a dominant. I'm given the privilege and someone's willingly allowed me to have my way with them in one of any manufacturers or a combination of all factors, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or, any faction thereof. That's a gift.
Right.
Someone's given me a gift, and I have to take that gift and I have to honor it. I have to treasure it. I have to nurture it.
Right.
And it's my responsibility. This is my belief as a dominant that it's up to me to know that person, what they want, what they need, what it like. So the way I'll say it is like, what are your deepest, wildest fantasies, desires, wants, and needs, right? When you come to me and you want to play, you're trusting that when you give yourself to me, that I will take you, whatever faction you give to me, and I will do something with it. Well, as a dominant, I am in service to that person. It's up to
Right.
me to learn them, know them, understand them, and then create a scene that will make their fantasies, wants, needs, and desires a reality
Right.
using my skill set that I've learned through my history in leather, BDSM, and kink to make them. So I'll do scenes, and my whole thing is their satisfaction throughout the scene. Right, my satisfaction comes from them being satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And if I get off, great. Almost always I do because I tend to not want to play unless I'm going to be because
Sure.
I'm not a service top or a fluff top. I'm gonna just get you off all day and go home with blue balls. No,
Right. Right.
those days are over. If you're going to play, we're probably going to engage. But if we don't, it's not a heartbreak. It's more
Right.
about satisfying you and your desires and fantasies, right? So my
Right.
hope is that when someone's given me themselves as a submissive, that I've, like I said, I've honored it, I've respected it, and I've cherished it. Yeah, and that I'm going to nurture it, and that when I give it back to them, they're sitting down there and they're receiving it. They're just like, wow, like, holy shit, this is in so much better shape than when I gave it to them. Like, that they put in their pocket and they're walking away, and all they can think about is, when can I give it back? When can I give it back? When can I give it back? Oh my God!
Goddamn right.
Someone,
I had an ex-girlfriend. I had an ex girlfriend. The first time we played around, we weren't a boyfriend at the time, but she texted me. She was like, because I was the first kind of delving into that world, and she texted me. I think the next day or later on that day, she was like, "Remember the Madonna video from the '90s where she's like in the hallway, she's in the hotel walking away, and she keeps like laughing to herself and giggling and like turning around." Like, I love having that fucking influence. It just feels so good. I love having that.
That's
Question.
the joy right there. What you don't want to have is you're giving it back to them and they're taking it and they're kind of going,
right.
Okay. Right. So that's where the training comes from. My role as a dominant is your pleasure, and giving back what you've freely, willingly given to me in a much better condition, so that we continue to engage and have this, partnership, relationship, dynamic, whatever you want to call it, for whatever course it runs.
Right. It's not always, but from my experience with talking with gays in the community, there seems to be less of an ownership, even when it's literally like daddy and whatever. But I mean, with partners or with people that you're with, there does seem to be less. You're not allowed to play with my things. You know what I mean? And again, it's not always, but having that type of world, I'm jealous as shit that I can't just be that. I mean, and I've been in lots of different monogamous and non-monogamous and shades of all of those, but there isn't so much an acceptance. I mean, I've literally talked with people who, multiple guys who are, I think in their late 40s, 50s, who are in marriages, and they kind of know that their partner goes and plays with somebody from time to time, but they're like, as long as I don't know about it, I don't really care. That is a fucking rarity in the straight world, and it's I'm not saying that I definitely want that going forward, but I mean, I like playing with other people, and I don't. It sounds flippant and it sounds like an excuse, but I don't know if you relate to this, but I almost feel like I have too much love to give to be tied into one part.
I used to have a submissive that I played with, and she goes by Luscious. And Luscious, when I first met her, she used to tell me, she calls me Scotty, right? Scotty, she goes, you got so much love. She never had met anybody who said. Now, I'll be fair and I'll be honest. My heart has not near the capacity to love that it had in those days. My life has gone in different directions and whatnot. But I used to love it when she used to say that, man. That and just have somebody from outside look into you and see how much love that you were able to provide for people. Good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And when I'm not guarded of it, that's when I'm the most free, and that's when they're the most free, and that's when because I mean, the times when I have a bad experience in a sex or an obscene, whatever you want to call it, the time is when I'm guarded of the love, is when I'm afraid that I'm going to get taken advantage of, or when I'm not taken advantage, when I'm afraid it's going to be taken for granted, or when I'm nervous about how I look or how I'm perceived, or like I get out of the moment and I get into my head, and that's when it's the most it's not fulfilling as it could be. And when I'm free and letting that shit flow, it's nature takes over, the animal takes over, and it's right in the moment, and it's better for me and it's better for them. And yeah. When did you know? I'm assuming that you're gay, or do you find yourself bisexual, or?
No, I'm het. I'm straight.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, there was a time when I was what we probably called hetero-flexible.
Right.
So I definitely have had my play with men, one-on-one groups, however you want to, yeah. But these days I'm, strictly not dickly.
Right. So when you were getting,
my tastes have changed, and my attractions have changed, and I've always been primarily interested in women. I definitely have a taste for trans. There's I have one of my longest running play partners is trans, who actually done the entire procedure, so she's fully operational as a woman. But it's just mainly I'm women now. I haven't really played with men outside of maybe doing demos at places or whatever to show proper technique and form and stuff like that. But anything intimate has basically been women.
now you were first, did you get into playing with male subs? Was it a natural inclination? Was it because it was easier to access the Dom world? Was it just you fell into it because someone saw your skills? Was it awkward?
In San Francisco, it just kind of fell into place here. I came out, met a gal at a venue, or I can't remember how. Oh, and I met through a friend through a friend, and turned out she was kinky, and she happened to have some influence here in San Francisco with people that pretty much were throwing all the parties and all the main events and stuff. So I was kind of like her little tag along, right? I was like her little bitch.
Yeah.
She'd take me to the events, and I just did what I do, right? And it just got recognized. A lot of people started saying, "Holy shit!" Like, who's this guy? Where'd he come from? What rock did he crawl out from underneath? Like,
right.
And it just kind of took off from there. I did a lot of stuff on the upper floor when it was taken off, and I was a guest. And back in those days, the invites were real members of the community that were practicing BDSM in their lifestyle.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be invited to some of those. And so I got a little bit of camera time through that, and started gaining some popularity through that. Not really even intentionally, it just happened. In fact, I probably in those days, I was being encouraged to do all the online things, like create a Twitter account and create this account, and push myself, like push me. I really didn't have much of an interest to be, like a professional performer in that industry. Although I've done my share of things in that industry, it wasn't my desire. I do what I do for free because I love to do it, right? So and that's how I got my popularity, was luckily through her. She knew people that were in the right places at the right time, and just kind of took me to venues and played a little, met people, and played a little, met people. And, before I knew it, I had a little bit of a name for myself here in San Francisco.
Okay. Was it awkward starting to play with males, or was it just kind of natural?
So take it back. I guess I'll share a little bit of like the roots. So, pretty much I'd always known that my interests were different than others. Okay. These days I'm kind of like jacked up and, look fairly decent. Okay. But back when I was a kid, I was red, pimply faced, scrawny, ugly twig. People like me. I was popular. People like me because I used to sell pot, right? I was the pot dude, right? And I was a fun person to be around. But as far as getting anything from anybody, girls were like, "Oh, hell to the no. You're cute. We like you, but I can't fuck you, dude. No way, right?" So, but I had met an older sister of a friend of mine, and I won't tell you the big long story, but we ended up having sex, and apparently I was really good at it, not knowing a single damn thing, and in fact, I remember she actually had sex with me because she thought I was a virgin. She asked me, I was really super shy, and I was all like, and so she gave me some because she believed I was a virgin. And when we were done, she was upset. Like, you could tell that she was like bitter about something, you know. And she goes, you know what, dude? She goes, I got a bone to pick with you. I really got to say something. It's bothering me. That's what her name was, Jenny. I says, what's up, Jenny? She goes, well, and we're still laying in bed. I don't know if it was immediately after or the next morning after. She goes, no. She goes, you really didn't need to lie to me in order to get some. What are you talking about? Well, you didn't have to tell me that you were a virgin to get some. She goes, you know, I kind of think you're cute, and I was helping her out doing something that she needed to have done with her vehicle. So she was like, I gave it to you. You didn't have to lie to me, but I didn't lie to you. She goes, dude, come on. The gig is up. You know, it's like, you don't need to keep it up, man. You already got it. You know what I mean? Whatever. Kind of shit that you went there. I'm like, but Jenny, I didn't lie. She goes, come on, dude. Like, I'm giving you a chance to come clean. You don't have to stick on. I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm like, but I'm not. And then, she, you know, I started like almost crying. She's like, you were serious. You were, weren't you? I'm like, yeah, what the fuck, man? So she's like, where in the hell did you learn how to do what the fuck you just did? And I'm like, magazines. I mean, it was my only access that I had.
Yeah, man.
So
it was hard. Porn was hard back in the day. Yeah. God damn it.
But she took me and took me to all of her stripper friends, you know, who were fucking all the big Guidos in town, right? And and because their Guidos weren't laying it down proper, she was taking me over there behind their back, and she'd take me over to somebody's house. And I'm telling you,
what a good girl, man. What a good girl.
Ronnie, pimply faced, ugly, 125-pound, 16, 17-year-old kid that's just right. Bring her into these girls' houses that were freaking gorgeous dancers, right? Just top of the line. And bring him in. I remember the first time she comes in, like, I can't remember what the other girl's name was. And she says, hey, she's kind of looking at me like, what's he doing here? And she's like, oh, this is the dude. She's like, what dude? She goes, this is the dude I've been telling you about. She goes, what do you mean the dude I've been telling you about? She's like, this kid right here, this is the guy. And she's like, that's so. But Jenny, the sex that we had was different. Okay, so from that point, I knew, like, whenever I'd have sex with a girl from that point on, and I did the things that I just naturally did with Jenny and her friends, these other girls were like, whoa, dude, whoa, no. So it was always like the missionary style, you know, I mean, it was, so I knew from early on that the things that I enjoyed was not what it seemed like everybody else was into. Right. So I kind of just had it tucked in a corner in my body. It's sort of like, you know, like a gay person who has to not be out of the closet, right? Tucks that part of them inside of them because they're afraid to let anybody else know about it, because everybody will make fun of you and scorn you and degrade you and not want to have you in their circles anymore. It was my same way with my sexual interests. So it just sat there for a long time. And back in Rochester, we had this club called Freakazoid. Okay. And Freakazoid was in like the little mini Castro district that we had in Rochester, right? All the gay bars and drag bars and stuff, right? Freakazoid was a club that had a different thing going on every night. Club ska, punk, hardcore one night, swing dancing the next night, country line dance. So I would go just to go out and do something, right? Right. My cowboy hat, go in as a cowboy. Take off the cowboy hat, go in all dressed up in punk gear, punk rock the next night, you know? So showed up on whatever night was supposed to be that night, right? And I'll never forget it, Pete. I'll never forget it, man. I walked through the front door and I'm getting to the people taking money, and they're different folks. I'm like, what the fuck is this person, right? And the cover was more, and I'm like, what? Who the hell are you, and why is it more, right? So I remember walking through the door, and as soon as I walked through the door, it was like, oh, leather, smell of leather slapped me right in the face. And I was like, oh, what's this? So when you first walked in, there was a bar immediately when you came in. And it was a split level place. So there was a bar there, and then you'd walk out on that level. And then that level, it had a square overlook down to the second level. The second level was the dance floor. So that level was like an overlook where everybody looked at everybody dancing, right?
Right.
So I remember heading to there because I wanted to go down to the bar and be involved in whatever activities were going on downstairs, right? So I remember the closer and closer I'm getting to that corner where you make the rap and you can see what's going on out there. I keep hearing this. Like, what the fuck is that, right? So I get up to the corner, and as soon as I turn the corner, hanging from the ceiling, they had an entire rope wall. So it was hanging from the rafters, and it was a rope wall. And in the middle of the rope wall was this guy completely, totally roped off to it and was hanging there. And this other guy was just whipping him. Yeah. Yeah. That's what it's. Swear to God. Like, rock hard in about 30 seconds. And I was like, who the fuck are these people? And where are they? What I did is I, asked around really quick. Who are you guys? Where you come from? What do you do? Holy shit. How do I get down with you?
Right.
And it was that group, the Rochester Rams, that I told you about. So, they said to me, oh, so you like what we do, kid? Yeah. I said, yeah, fuck yeah. You kidding me? I said, yeah. Right. I said, well, why don't you meet us? They had a little business in a little shitty rinky-dink like flea market mall in downtown in Rochester, right? In a place called Village Gate Mall. So it's like, where you get sports cards and just, it was a little tiny mall indoors, like an outlet mall inside, right? And they had some business there, and to this day, I honestly can't remember what the hell their business was, right? But they invited me to come down and just sit around and hang out. So that's what I do. I go down there, any free moment that I had or any free space that I had, I would drag my ass down there and just talk with them, and I knew that they had a dungeon in the back. They had a door, there's like glass counters, and a flip door that would go in between it. And we'd be sitting there chatting, and a couple people come walking up, and they'd flip the thing up, and they'd walk down the hall, and I'd go, where are you going, right? And then I learned that down there, and there was a dungeon that they had down there.
Like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, so what they'd have me do is they say, hey kid, you want to hang out with us? Yes. Well, we'll be at this place on Saturday. Why don't you help us get everything unloaded and set everything up? So that's what I would do. I'd go and set everything up and learn all the pieces of equipment, put this together like this and that together like that, and that's what this is, and and before they would even allow me to enter the dungeon space at their establishment there, I had to have a piece of leather. So I couldn't get in without leather. And one day, Amber gave me a pair of leather pants. And that was my invite. Like, there you go, kid. Halfway at it. And from there, just, it took off. At the same time, I was very lucky. So as I began to practice with those men as a submissive, learning the bottom portion of it, I was very, very, very fortunate. So this was in the mid to late 90s, okay? And I had placed an ad in a rinky-dink, crummy little newspaper. I don't even want to know. It was just, do you remember back in the day when you wanted to meet somebody scrupulously, you place an ad in a newspaper?
I've heard of it.
Well,
I didn't have the experience.
Like the Guardian or whatever, some newspaper that wasn't really a popular mainstream Democrat and Chronicle or Examiner mainline newspaper, a little shoddy newspaper. You'd take out an ad in there and post an ad. And if you were lucky and someone responded to it, great. Well, this gal responded to it. And it was only to have sex, right? It was, I forget how it was worded. It was very discreet, but we all knew what we were meeting for if you ever met somebody through that system, right? Well, I met this gal, and she shows up, and she's like 5'2", 110 pounds. Remind me of a dark-haired, brunette-haired woman that, like Annie, with the curls, right?
Who?
Annie.
Orphan Annie. Wow.
Just imagine an Orphan Annie with brown hair. So this little bitty itty thing shows up,
right?
And she wants to she's wanting to have sex. So what the deal was is she was married and her husband, like what you were saying, wasn't big on slinging dick. And
Right.
it was like, do what you got to do, and I don't care. So she was given permission to go play. So she's like, okay, here's the deal. She goes, pack up I told we would do it for a weekend. So pack up what you think you wanted to have for a weekend, and I would rent this 2-bedroom hotel room, and where the pretense was to go there and just kind of, at first I thought was just to go there and screw, right? For the weekend, right? But she wanted me to pack everything like for going for a picnic, is I think the way she described it. So you pack whatever crap you can take. So I remember going to pick her up, and she wouldn't let me get out of the car without opening the door for me. You know, there was certain things that she was doing that mirrored and mimicked some of the things that I was watching being done in the gun space, right? And I'm going,
right.
I'm going, nah. Because at that time, I didn't know it was, het people or straight people did it. I only knew it as a men's gay thing. I didn't know that, so I'm just going, nah, it's just, but, so she says, she was really adamant about it. She opened the door to get into the little cabin that we were at, right? And she says, I want you to go in, sit down, watch television, and I'll get everything from the car. And I'm like, no, I'll help you. No, please, just go sit down. And I'm going to, okay, so I'm watching TV, click, 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 click. She brings everything in, sets everything up, brings everything in the house. And then I remember I'm sitting here watching TV, click, 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 click. And she's standing like over the top of me. She goes, all right, here's the way it's going to go, motherfucker. And I'm like, huh? Like, what are you talking about? Her whole tone changed. She goes, this is the deal. She goes, I want to be fucked. I want to be fucked hard. I want to be fucked often, and I want you to beat the shit out of me while you're doing it. And that's what your purpose is. I'm like, huh?
Good girl.
What? Yeah. So I says to her, so then we related. I said, look, I can't, I don't know how to do this. I'm doing the same thing as you. I'm in service to men, trying to learn what you're asking me. She goes, don't even worry about it. She goes, I'm going to tell you exactly what I want, how I want it, when I want it, and I'll persuade you through different methods to be in tune with what I want. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I had the very fortunate ability to be learning from the bottom side through the men's community, and also at various moments learning how to actually top another human being, being trained from that person up, because her skill set superseded me by leagues, right? So she grew me, they grew me, and then, I started getting my opportunities within that group. So it was fun. I had a lot of fun in those early days, and it was a wonderful experience, man. It really was. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
That's awesome. I will also say one thing you said, that these people were having sex different, and then when you would go and have sex with a regular girl, they would be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now, and maybe this is your experience has changed. I haven't met maybe this is just my experience. Maybe I just attract pheromone wise dirty little bottom bitches, but I haven't fucked a girl who doesn't want, and obviously you try different things. You try it in slow, you ease them in, you put a little hair tug or a little, hand around the throat, or you try it out slow. But I haven't met a girl who doesn't want, even girls who are fucking dominant with other men. When they meet my ass, shit changes. There's something weird and animal about that flowers open. I haven't met a girl who hasn't been a little fucking bomb.
I'm talking about 30 years ago.
Right.
As a 16, 17, 18-year-old
living
in a extremely conservative, small upstate New York town.
Yeah, that's valid. Yeah.
These girls were looking to be married,
right.
and
they weren't even waxed.
Just the fact that they were going to be coming over your house and possibly, potentially, maybe engaging in some sex. If their families knew about that, it would not go over well.
Right.
So, we didn't talk about sex. We didn't discuss sex as kids growing up because it was a hush hush. Don't discuss. It's a naughty, filthy, rotten, terrible thing. So when you're that young and in that environment, you know, someone like me comes out,
Right.
woo han,
Right.
and wanting to yank and tug and pull and push was just too overwhelming for somebody who was, only engaging in sex their first or second or third time
Yeah,
as a
that's yeah, totally valid. I hope and I pray that those ladies, when they got out of their first marriage, thought fondly back, thought fondly back, and like there was my pussy did get extremely wet when that guy back when I was 16 grabbed my hair like that. Maybe there's something to that. Um, yeah, that's really interesting stuff. I think we gotta wrap up in like 10-15 minutes, but I did want to touch
caught me
bases
off
with you.
guard with this, man. You know that? I thought we were
Really?
going to talk some politics shit. I was ready to start. I was ready to start. You caught me off guard with trying with asking me about my int, but that's cool. There ain't nothing that's a secret in my life.
Right. I mean, that's what's weird about my show is that I'm too conservative for the liberals and I'm too liberal for the conservatives. I want to talk about hanging somebody up by rope and then 2 seconds later say Trump stuff. Um, so so one of the things that also beside because I could fucking talk to you, I really want you to come back on the show because this was like it's already been 51 minutes and I'm like shit, I want to get to this and that. But I did want to tie up the last few minutes with just one of the other reasons that I had reached out to you is I can't remember the exact impetus, but I remember you posting something that wasn't 100% on the line of what I would call liberal thought or liberal ideology and facing a backlash online or social media or at least addressing it certain ways and what I kind of related to was the idea that, hey, I, Peter Feliciano, have done, not only do I have gay family members, I've fooled around with a few dudes in my life. It's not really my thing, but it's, I've tried it. I have done, I've been a fag hag since I was a little, a little kid. Like I grew up in San Francisco. Like I, I've done volunteer work and performances for the gay community. Like I have gay friends, like I am not homophobic, but I also don't think Trump is Satan. So where does that kind of fit? Like, is there a space for me and my experience to be valid? Is there gray area here to not, you know what I mean? To not be dehumanized because of what something I think or something I say. Um, and you were, I can't remember the exact thing, but I remember there was something there. Do you remember what exactly it was?
Well, it's hard to say, and I say that because a lot of the things that I have up, I'm using a lot more discretion these days, and some of the things I'm starting to do is find more kindness in my heart in the ways that I
Express it.
well, yeah, because I think I might have been a little too harsh. I'm starting to, so, but I think what you probably saw and what you can tend to happen is I do sort of poke at, mock, antagonize the liberals and the Democratic Party for some of the things that they say and do, which I believe are contradictory to what their basic concepts are, right? So that's how I brush people the wrong way. So I think probably some of the things you saw I might have removed some of that stuff because I was pretty brutal about it early on. I was doing it more to antagonize, poke, and get them all stirred up rather than try to heighten their awareness
Right.
of you're being a hypocrite here. You're asking for X, Y, and Z and inclusion and being part of and recognize me, but in the same breath, you're gonna say negative and terrible things and wish harm on somebody solely because they have a different uh, belief in something that evolves around politics that you do.
Right.
And I think that's something that really needs to be addressed in our alternative lifestyle community, because one of the things that we use as a preaching selling point is we're all inclusive. Leather is all inclusive, right? So, and it's meant like that because for years, the people that, I would go to clubs as Mr. San Francisco Leather, and I could zone in on somebody who I could see was that one person over there in the corner who wished that they were having fun, but they were scared to get involved because they didn't want people to think I could just hone in on them, man. I could see that one person or that two people in every place that I went to, and I would make it my priority to walk up to them, approach them, as big and as gnarly and as scary as I was, and go, welcome,
Right.
and make them feel good and have a conversation with them and get out of them, why you're here, man. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Keep coming on back to this thing. This is where it happens. Be who you are. Live the life that you want to live. So, we're living in this leather community where we want people to feel all inclusive and all accepted, except if you're a Trump supporter, except if you want to reopen, except if you want to support non-immigrants. I mean, you have all these little clauses that I don't think it steals away from what you're saying. You're a hypocrite. You want to be all inclusive, but you want these clauses. So what I was doing early on, when you probably noticed, was anytime I felt as though this community that's all inclusive was bashing on others because of their expressions of the other side, I was handily pointing out to them, how they really are a hypocrite. And they didn't like that. People don't like being told that, you're a hypocrite. Shut the fuck up. Practice what you preach, or don't preach it,
Right. And there's, I think early on I was trying to, there's been, and I certainly can do it many times today, but I was much more on the end of, you know what, I'm gonna rustle feathers so I can get attention for this, and I'm gonna rustle feathers but there's a difference. There's a way to do it tactily. And I think I've had certain times during this venture of a podcast where I have not been all that tactful. But the
That's
principle,
just part of being human, man. It's just,
right. But the principle still remains that I still believe that they're being hypocrites, but I don't necessarily have to hit them over the head with it. And it also, what's been really helpful for me, and I don't know if this will change. I don't think it will, but I have a number of very liberal, friends, dear friends, who I know have started to realize and have already, or have long ago realized, that I'm not going to probably vote for the person that they vote for, that are quietly still accepting me, and I think they don't know how to handle it. And I hope I can. I mean, we're not really open about it, because I feel like as soon as I open that door, like, hey, do you know I might actually vote for Trump, but you love me dearly. We've known each other for years, and I already know that they're not the type of people to slam the door on me. So I wonder how that internally is a confusion for them, and I hope I can send them love. Like I hope they feel that it's okay. And that's the biggest thing of this whole fucking podcast, is that it's okay for us to disagree, and I don't need to,
I saw recently, I have a friend that I have lots of friends, and I have people that I admire and I look up to, right? And there's one fellow that I have an enormous admiration for. He is absolutely a pioneer. He is absolutely a leather god, if you want to say there's a god. Okay, this guy has offered so much to the community of BDSM, leather, kink, gay, that if there's a heaven, he's definitely going to it, right? And I can't even begin to tell you how sad I was when I saw him express in a post that he had on Facebook of a friend of 40 fucking years, man. So you've been doing this shit and had a friend for 40 years. Now, this guy lived through, all the shit that happened in New York City when it was happening, all this crummy stuff, all of it, man. And to have friends a friend that you went through all of that with, and have gotten to this date and time in 2020, drop him as a friend don't want to hear nothing else this guy's got to say about anything else in the entire world because he supports another political adventure is fucking ludicrous, man. I can't grip my. It actually almost brings me to fucking tears, man. That I don't know. This guy has got more love in his heart than you could fucking can't even fathom on my pinky, right? But his line is drawn so deep in the sand over this one human being that he's tossed a 40-year plus relationship out the window because of this other person. I can't get it, man. Friendships are hard enough as they are to come by in this world, period. But to have one for as long as almost I've been alive and toss it over, I can't fathom that. I mean, I'm sure he makes some rational, some sort of rational about it, and he's okay with it. Apparently, right. He can live with it in his heart. Maybe he can't. Maybe he still struggles within his heart with that decision. Maybe it wasn't an easy decision. I doubt it was. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that's what he said. But nonetheless, he made that decision, and it really bothers me that that's kind of almost the trend of society now.
Right.
You want up and I want down, and we were really good friends, and now I'm going to unfriend you and not talk to you anymore because you're going up and I'm going down. And the more that we live in this society today, the more things that we're going to be presented with that are going to cause these forks in the road.
Right.
And if we're going to split ways on forks like that and lose the cores of what brought us together and have us together, I don't know what that says about us moving forward as a productive society. Like, what are we going to turn into?
I think what happened is they changed slowly. They changed the definition of things. That, where, as an example, and I think it's probably applicable in the story that you told, where if you vote for Trump, you want violence towards me as a gay person, or if you vote for Trump, the definition has been shifted where you want violence towards me, or you want me to go away if I'm trans, or you want me to go away if I'm an immigrant. And I think the fight for those of us who are more discerning, and for those of us who are in the middle on any given topic, have to continue to move forward and shoot down those definitions as often as possible. I follow, and I ranted about it on my Instagram, Peter_Feliciano. But I was ranting about it on my Instagram because there's this black female comedian who is hilarious. I fucking love her, and I hate her politics. But I still follow her, and I think I've unfriended her once and then refriended her or followed. And she posted something about, she flippantly said, in a time we're being attacked more than ever, blah, 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 blah. And I thought to myself, like, in a time we're being attacked more than ever, like, and I ranted like a mother. I was like, do you not have a book? Like, have you gone outside, motherfucker? I'm not saying that there aren't a huge amount of growth that we could, even from her perspective, for what affects black females. But to say we are being attacked more than ever is, it's almost willful ignorance. I know it's just ignorance, and I don't think she would be doing it poor intentioned.
Here's one thing that I've discovered.
They changed the definition slowly. They continued to repeat the definition over and over so that it becomes true.
Well, I think one thing that I'm starting to try to do is do you remember that comedian out of New York? Oh, what was the guy's name, man? The redheaded guy with the goatee.
Oh, Louis C.K.
Louis C.K. So Louis C.K. did a bit. Hilarious. Remember that? We did the bit about, this person using the word hilarious to describe how funny something was that was common dumb thing. And he's like, do you know what the fucking word hilarious? So what I've started, that actually was a learning lesson for me. And from that, what I've noticed is today in our society, we use these exorbitant words, these words that are bigger than what is really trying to be said, because I think we think if we use those big words that people will listen to more we've got to say, right? So if I say you're nice, you don't. If I say you're great, if I say you're awesome, if I say you're super, and I start using bigger words, that what I've said to you all of a sudden has a bigger meaning, right? But it's all I've said to you is you're nice, right? So what I try to do is not use the words that over amplify something small that I'm trying to say. And then when I watch what somebody else is saying, I try not to. I try to tone their shit down, because I'm going, really, like really, did you, So in your example, the most in here. No, I know you really don't mean that. I know what you really mean. So I try to make some sort of, rationale in my mind. Sometimes they still think they believe that it is, because it's pure ignorance. But more times than not, I'm finding that it's people who are just trying to be heard,
right,
versus actually saying what they're trying to say, because I think as if they say what they're trying to say, nobody wants to hear that, right?
right. And hopefully, we'll wrap up. Like, hopefully, not just the fight is being tactful, or shooting down that bullshit from time to time, but also I fucking try, and I fail all the time, but I try to practice seeing that, like you just said, that they are afraid of not being heard, and hearing them, or appreciating and at least seeing that they are just a scared little kid just like the rest of us, and trying to appreciate and hear and value that little kid, you know what I mean, and that scared person, that's part of the fight too, is loving that person even though they're a fucking cunt. Like, loving that person even though they're scared, loving that person even though they're angry.
Especially if you have some sort of roots that extend beyond that. You know what I mean? Like, if you've met them and you know them in person, and you how you met them has nothing to do with, if you met them out on the street and they were picketing and you walk by and now all of a sudden you're friends, but you're not. I met you in a club and we shared the likeness of a lifestyle that is accepting of everybody. What you got your political lines tied to doesn't interest me. I don't. Do you show up at an event? Do you practice safe, sane, consensual? Do you treat people right? Do you not harm people? What's your political? I don't care. Put all that shit in your back pocket, shove it away, man. If what you do within the communities that I've met you in, you remain to do, and you're upstanding it, that's really all that I care about, right? The rest is all, as far as I'm concerned. There's
Right.
the whole, this thing with the opening, the reopening, the not opening, and to me, it bothered me that the Republicans went out and appeared as though they were willing to stand on the front lines and fight for the rights of our freedoms being taken away from us. I'm glad somebody did, but I'm also sad that it appears as though it was the Republicans, because only because that's seeing how it seems like it's only the Republicans out there. Now it's become a blue-red liberal conservative, and it has nothing to do with the information being provided to us, and nothing to do with, the people that are on the blue side don't want to give any weight to the circumstances that the millions of Americans are giving up in order to save the few thousands of possible lives. So there's a balance trying to go on there, right? That's what it is. But no one's really focusing on that anymore, because the Republicans have stepped in and said, freedom. So the Democrats are they're going to refuse it no matter what. So now they've drawn the line. The blue and red lines are drawn in the sand, and anybody who's blue and is hardcore blue is not going to go for reopening, only because a Republican has said that they want it open, right?
Right.
That's what's really getting me. It's sad, that we aren't really. We're driven by our political ties right now because of the election cup, and so many people dissatisfied with who's in office. It's terrible to see. It's sad to watch people swayed the way they are, almost like little puppets. I think I sent you a message where I wondered whether or not, I mean, albeit Trump's an ass in a lot of ways, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I will give this man credit for, and the blue side can deny it if they want, but he has got to be one of the most, if not the most intelligent individuals when it comes to manipulating the press and manipulating okay? So I'm serious. I mean,
Right.
it's like, so like when he was wanting to become elected, when he was, not the president yet, all these stories came out about, grabbing her pussy and everything. And he made some he stood by all that, you know what I mean? And he made statements hard against women. And what it did is it infuriated the blues, right? But what they don't realize is he knew and believed that there was this silent group of people sitting at home, sucking down beer, watching TV, saying, that there woman ain't gonna do nothing but cook and clean and do it. Doesn't believe in the woman having a place in society, and he screamed and hollered. He let the blues scream and holler how much they wanted those rights observed, and it just like stuck a stick in the hornet's nest. Those people sitting on their couches said, "What? Oh hell no! He's our fan now. Hell yeah! We're gonna get behind that guy now." And out the door they went, right? And I think he possibly might have done the same thing here with this bleach deal, right?
Maybe, yeah, it's possible. I mean, I have a lot of, I've ranted enough, I think, about the pussy grabbing by the pussy thing, but like, yeah, it's possible. I mean, yeah, it's very interesting stuff. I think he's a lot smarter than he gets credit for, and I think it's good for us to, and also I think he's more well intentioned than he gets credit for. I
Right.
do. I do have to piss and go to a Zoom meeting, and I'm gonna die if I don't
let me
piss.
share,
But
let me share one more thing with real quick, Peter. I want to
sure.
talk about that. So I think what he did, and I think it's plausible, that he knows at this point that if he says anything that he wants some favoritism for or people to hear on his side, all he has to do is poke at the blues, and they'll scream and holler enough that they'll hear it, and then all of a sudden become interested in it. So I think what he plausible what I think he did with the bleach thing is, one, I think he was an idiot. I think he was given some information that what I've discovered, I believe, is somewhat true. From what it sounds like, there is some forms of a medication that is put into the bloodstream that, if technically you want to look at it, is considered a disinfectant, right? So
Right.
I'm sure he was probably briefed a little bit before he went out there, and in that briefing they discussed that. And after they said the bleach thing, he probably looked over and was like, "Hey, well, do you think we can do that too?" Not necessarily the bleach, but whatever the medicine that they actually use is, that when formally looked at next to bleach is identical, right? But in minute, small form. He probably did it, but I also think that he might have done that knowing full fledged that the blues are going to pick up on it, run to town with it, and the next day was a Friday, and then that Friday, all these states were supposed to be opening up. And their person spoke about those states opening up, where for the 2 or 3 days leading up there, it was, how dare you protest this? You can't open, you can't open, you can't open. How dare you open? Bleach was mentioned, and all of a sudden, no one cared about any states open. Because all they talked about was bleach, 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 bleach. And if he is smart enough to have said, which it appears like he is when it comes to the press and the media, how to get them to do what he wants them to do in order to deflect and get something else accomplished, he did what he was successful in doing that. I mean, I don't think
It's possible.
I
Yeah.
think it's plausible that it's something that he did. But I
Nice.
want to share that. I know we talked about that a little bit, but anyhow.
Well, I'd love to have you back on at some point. I really would. This has been a really interesting conversation,
Yeah.
and you're a good dude, and I think we could. I would love to pick your brain more about the politics thing and also the sex thing, and it's just a really interesting conversation. So thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate
Thank you for having me, man. I'm glad I finally finally sat down with you. You've asked me many times in the past, and I never felt the necessity to do it. But for some reason, you know, I've always liked you as a person. I like watching the way that you kind of stay neutral, and I think it's a good thing to sit down and, you know, chew the fat, so to say, with somebody else about various topics. You know, I was telling my mom when I was getting ready to, I told her I'd be sitting down with you, right?
Right.
Like, oh, really? Oh, my God. Right. I says, yeah. I said, just imagine, like, because she's like, what are you going to talk about? I says, I thought we were going to talk all politics. I didn't know. I didn't know we were going to go into. But I said, you know what? It's healthy for me, and I think it's healthy for the world, and it's definitely something that I admire about you. Is like you have these talk shows, mainly sports shows, where you got one guy who sits across from somebody, and you have the topic of Dallas just won the game today, right? You talk about the pros and cons about how the game went. And the other guy talks. Sometimes you agree, sometimes you disagree, but you get all of the angles covered and all the little facets of it. So that's what I see you doing, and it's something that I really want to and am willing to engage in with you on as regular of a basis as you're willing to.
Thank you, man.
Just because it's healthy for you, it's healthy for me, it's healthy for your listeners, it's healthy for our society to pick some of these things apart and look at them from different views and angles, and as many as you possibly can, so that we can all get a better understanding of what is or isn't going on and make our own conclusions from that, you know?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Big Red. So, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're listening, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, rate it, share it with your less offendable friends, or with your more offendable friends. You can find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano, and you can support this podcast by either going and buying my music, buying my album, or patreon.com/conservatish. Did you want to plug anything?
No, I don't need to. Just plug love, man. Love and openness and understanding. That's it, man. Love your brother, no matter who they are, or what they believe in. Love is unmeasurable, man.
Amazing.
And
Same.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate it, man. It's been an honor and a pleasure to sit with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. And we'll see you again. Thanks again, Big Red. Have a good night, brother.
Yeah, you too, brother.